What's up, guys? Leland here with Bottom Table Tyrants, and we have brought for you today a bunch of GMs. We're going to ask them some questions, and hopefully their answers will be informative for you and something that you can take and add into your games. So here we go, guys. We're going to set them up, ask them some questions. Let us know in the comments below if you like this type of format. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys. Leland out.
Most of my players would probably say that I am too easy in combat.
I don't think I've ever actually killed a character in combat, so I'd wager probably too easy.
If you don't use at all any of my stuff, I don't blame you.
My players would say that I am too easy in combat, and that is not for trying. I try constantly to make combat that difficult, like ramp up, tense, intense moment of you feel like your life is on the line at every point in time. I use calculators to figure out what the combat is going to be like, and it never works. My players crush through my combat almost every time.
I would say too easy, in the middle.
I constantly have to scale up enemy HP or damage in the middle of combat.
I definitely shoot for story over and drama over roles.
Class systems, because that's really only one I know.
I much prefer a class system, mostly because I feel like it gives players an identity when they don't have a character really fully fleshed out.
I like the class system better. It gives a little more organization and structure, and it gives the players kind of more baseline kind of creative input to how they're gonna play the character.
I really prefer a class system that has options in it. Like 5th edition has different schools that you can study in as a wizard, or colleges you can attend as a bard. That gives you a way to differentiate. Maybe you're on the 3rd campaign with this group and someone played a bard last campaign. You want to be a bard, but a little bit different. That gives you that.
I think that's why I like 5e as much as I do, because I think they do a good job of blending both what is arguably one of the first and biggest skills or class systems. Because I mean, literally, you're talking when it started, you had warrior, mage, thief, and that was it. And then now you get to that, and it's like you have all this list of skills and things that you're good at, but at the end of the day, it is usually a d20 and the difficulty of the task at hand that determines your success.
I don't do a lot of prep at all. It's usually half a page, scribbled notes, and then I'll do kind of an overall arc. Usually plan about 4 to 6 games. If I have a big arc, I work through that, and then depending on how that goes, there's usually another arc after that, but it's very off the cuff.
Word docs and Excel sheets. Excel sheets to track all the experience points, so that way when they go back and say, well, why did I get all this, where am I level at, I can go right down the list of what they got all the levels from. And then Word documents, saved sessions, whatever date it was that session happened.
The most recent campaign that I'm running, which is a 5th edition D&D game of a bunch of bards, it's a lot of, I'll have maybe 1 or 2 words written on a sheet of paper of things that I want those characters to get to in that session. And everything besides that, I'm coming up with off the top of my head, because I know if I write any more than those words, they're not going to get to it.
If I'm preparing for something like 10 Candles, then I have a lot of prep work to do, because horror is definitely a weak point. And horror just involves so many different elements that are not my strong suit. Whereas if I'm making a session for 5e, if I'm making a campaign game, if I think the session is going to take 3 hours, maybe 30 minutes to an hour.
My horror games like Dread and Cult, I've gone so far as to get onto audio editing software and chop up soundtracks so that it matches up with the monologue that I've written for a character to get this cinematic, momentous moment. And ooh, it's real frustrating when characters interrupt those cinematic, momentous moments. But when I do get to deliver one all the way through and it times up with the music, it feels triumphant. It's really impactful for the players. I love it when my players take notes. It is incredibly important to take notes for a multitude of reasons. One is just to keep up with what's going on in the story. Two is, as a GM, we put a lot of work into building these worlds, creating these characters, fleshing out these plot lines. And when someone shows up 2 weeks from now and you say, okay, what do you guys want to do? And they're like, oh, I don't remember what we were doing. Who was that guy that we talked to in that inn? It's kind of heartbreaking to say like, oh, I didn't have enough of an impact on you.
Good player habits consist of always being invested in what is going on at the table. That is probably the #1 best habit to do in the times of cell phones and distractions and even just ADD and boredom. It is much more difficult to look at every player and be invested in their adventure as well as your own.
So the most important thing that I can say to any player is, first of all, have fun, right? We're here to play a game together. We're here to have fun together. We're here to engage together. But a lot of that fun, a lot of what makes a good game is having everyone there and attentive and paying attention.
I'd almost say brevity is the best way to go, especially when it comes to the combat question as well, where it's if someone's trying to take it too seriously or play by the rules too much, they're always going to be looking up something and it's going to drag it down. So it's kind of that succinct, give your players time to figure out what they want to do, but then they're ready when their turn comes around to kind of have it all be smooth.
We're here to tell a story together. You should feel engaged. You should feel connected. And that's not all on the GM to run. It's up to the players to show up every time.
Anything that makes them keep talking the entire game. Yeah, where they're kind of leading it and deciding what the game's going to do, what the story's going to go.
Love it when players talk more than they think they should. And I'll expand upon that. That doesn't just mean in character. That doesn't just mean hogging the limelight and taking the table. I'm referring to the player who wants to play a brooding character and wants to kind of sit in the corner and be the Aragorn before he throws his hood off in Lord of the Rings. They want to be that lone ranger. And that's great. You can play that character, but say things, describe your facial features, describe your attitude, describe slight and subtle reactions to things so that the other players and the GM at the table have something to play off of. If you're a new player and you're uncomfortable getting into role playing, you don't want to do a character voice and you don't know how to react to certain situations, internalize that into the character.
When they're just talking, especially about a problem that it was a one sentence of this is the scenario, and next 10 minutes in they're describing and like, oh man, that's when you know like, oh, that's cool, that worked out well. Yeah, that's good.
The age-old improv staple of yes and. Again, we're all coming together to play a game together, to tell a story together, to engage with each other. It is incredibly important to, you don't have to agree with everyone at the table, but try to move the story forward. Try to give more reasons to engage with each other and engage with the NPCs that the GM is bringing to the table.
There's two different types of really bad sessions. There's bad sessions that go off, in my opinion. There's bad sessions that go off the rails because of stuff that is outside of your control. That can be, sometimes that's a communication issue between players, breakdowns, stuff like that. And then there's stuff that was well within your control. And that stuff is more lack of communication on your part or just differences in what is expected out of the game.
If you want to prepare something that is intense and expansive and in-depth, be sure that you are okay with your players completely destroying everything that you've built.
Worst session? I fully prepared back in when I was doing Wrath of the Righteous for Pathfinder. I fully prepared for one scenario of them going into a fight. That evening was about 3 hours for a Friday night. Planned on it, and they chose to not do that fight and to do go throughout the I forget what the city was that I did not prepare for whatsoever, and I was on the spot, and it was obvious I was making it up as we were playing.
And I had an entire map drawn out with key points that they could travel to, and it got to the point where they were trying to take shortcuts through dense, awful forest to shortcut from one key point to another. But I knew in my mind that if they got to that key point at that moment, it was going to break the whole story, and it was going to ruin the reveal that I had planned at the end, and it was going to just ruin the whole experience.
My primary game I've used for the last few years has been Deathwatch, and it goes back to its mission-based, and the old Fantasy Flight system was very cumbersome. And so trying to make elite special forces, genetically altered super soldiers, have character traits or interact in a more player-friendly way is just really difficult. And then that's the downside to the half page of notes, is because then you run out of what you're going to do.
I was trying to create an open world, but I made it too open. Yeah, so then it was hard to have any meaningful story.
It's important to give the players the impression of an open world.
Yeah.
And then not actually be.
But you don't know that until you're actually trying it.
Until you try it, yeah.
Because you don't want to do a railroad. Because I had a buddy that would always go choo choo whenever he thought I was railroading a story. Like, what? I mean, he was joking, but
sure.
So then I realized I did the extreme of that one. So.
And I snapped and I blew up at my players and I said, "Look, if you guys can't follow the lines on the map, then we just don't need to play this session anymore." And everyone at the table, thankfully, a kind group that I had played with for a long, long time, said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what's going on? Are you okay? Let's talk about this." And no one blew up back at me, and they were able to bring me back to reality, and we had a conversation about it, and kind of navigated from there. And they were willing to compromise and follow the lines on my map once I had aggressively made that clear.
I have not encountered that. Not the murdering kind. All the friends I've been playing with and people I've been playing with so far, I haven't ran into that. And if I did, I'd probably listen to Tim's advice.
You know what they say about murder? If you've never seen a murder hobo,
you are the murder hobo. What about?
Oh my god!
What about the thief hobo? Do you ever have?
Oh yeah.
Who steals from other players and NPCs and everything.
Yeah, that. Oh, the thief hobo. Man, Corey's probably one of those. Yeah, no, it's I think it's fun to watch and play it out, but be fully aware that they're gonna get in trouble if they get caught.
So what I like to do is feed them bad guys. Just give them bad guy after bad guy after bad guy and let them be that murder hobo and feel justified in it. And then once they feel justified in being a murder hobo, then start feeding them good guys and see if they still murder hobo. And if they do, then you keep feeding them good guys and you keep feeding them weaker and weaker prey. And then once that's done, you come back with all of the ramifications of their actions in game. Make them feel like they have actually made a mistake in character, not outside of game. That kind of course corrects them and steers them into, oh, the decisions that I've been making matter. I need to rethink these things. And then you don't stop there. You keep feeding them both good guys and bad guys to kill so that they still get to play out that power fantasy. They still get to take those actions they want to take in combat. But hopefully you've taught them to think about the consequences of those actions before they take them.
Honestly, I love murder hobos. It's super easy to handle them. You give them something to murder, and then when they murder the wrong thing, you let the players deal with it. And if they can't handle that level of storytelling and that level of both, reciprocity and consequence, then they don't really belong at my table.
Almost, so that just goes into like screening players before you even start. Just if someone's wanting to do that or be disruptive or not have the kind of necessary teamwork mentality before you can start, like, it's not worth the effort at that point. So if they do want to kill everything, you almost have to kind of rely on the players then to bring in the corrective action, in a sense.
Yeah.
And so if everyone else suffers, then they're going to single out the person that's causing that problem. Not, I mean, it goes back to the whole time wasting thing. So it's if someone's going to try and like max out a character and cheese out as much as possible, and they're constantly looking up the books and constantly looking up the rules, it goes back to that time management bit where don't waste time. I don't care if people are on their phones, I don't care if they're having side talks or whatever, but as long as they're engaged, interactive, and participating, that's fine.
My big table rule is have fun. Remember that usually when you're playing a game like this, it's with a group of friends or it's with a group of at least like-minded individuals. If I, as a GM, am getting through a section of my story and someone says, oh, that reminds me of this thing that happened to me at work, and then the whole table together starts to talk about work and is joking and laughing and having a good time, I don't need to interrupt that just because I want to get back to the story at hand. We're here to hang out as a group of friends, and groups of friends like to have fun and chit-chat together. Now, if someone's on their phone and in the corner not paying attention, that's not okay. I'm going to try and bring them back into the story, bring them back into the game, because we are there to play together.
Combat, if it starts getting, it's taken more than a minute to make a decision or to even start acting on it, like, okay, you have to roll, I'm not sure what I think, fortitude or a reflex save to see if you're still mentally in the combat. Otherwise, I'm moving on to the next person. I do not like when there's a combat and I built up the intensity of it. I've got the music in the background going. Everyone, 3 people just went in a row. They're intense, and the 4th person just stops and, okay, so what happened? Oh.
My smaller rule, and this helps out a lot, I think, with newer players, is don't ever ask me if you can do something in game. Only ever tell me what you want to do, and together we'll figure out what rolls you need to make or what actions you need to take to see if you can accomplish that thing.
Horgus from Wrath of the Righteous. Because if there's one thing I found out I'm good at role-playing is an old, cranky, rich white man.
There you go. That's weird.
Because just saying, to generally make a situation worse was a blast. Like, they hated that guy, and I loved it. That was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of the, so it was Death Watch, Warhammer 40k, and so the memorable NPC, I basically made, so we had a player named Kevin, and I made a character named Kevin, and he was basically this normal person that was born with a special soul that needed to be herded and shepherded around. So it was a good way to balance out the supremely elite nature of the group by having basically a human idiot that they had to keep track of for several games.
In one of my longest campaigns that I ran, I had, instead of dealing with characters who were poor and had to work their way up to riches, they started the game working for the richest guy in Baldur's Gate. And I named him Marthas Flintfeather, and he had a mansion up on the west side of the city that looked out over the whole city. He gave them mounts in the first couple sessions. He gave them food. He gave them a place to stay. He gave them weapons. He gave them everything. So whenever they wanted to, they could always go back to his mansion and recoup and restock. And it kind of made for a more... It gave them a safe space in the world that they knew that they could always return back to, which was cool.
Yeah, probably Scrig.
Okay.
Scrig was discovered. He was a cook for players never found out who to, and I'm definitely not gonna reveal it now. But he was chopping up sheep to feed to various ages of shadow dragons, and he ended up becoming the paladin owlbear riding hero that everybody hated to see go.
other players that I had in that game have run their own campaigns, they've used Martha's Flint Feather in the exact same way. I have played a game where I, as a player, got to go to Martha's Flint Feather's mansion and use that as my home base for a couple months. So that was a lot of fun.